Hello, my name is Dr. Christopher Gennari, and in today's episode, we're going to deal with the effects of the Phalanx. This is Great Big History Podcast, and today we do Greek citizenship. The invention of citizens, the invention of democracy, Greek navies, Greek phalanxes, the effects. So when we left off in our last episode, we were talking about the Phalanx, a box of men, farmers, standing shoulder to shoulder, wearing armor, carrying a shield and a spear, who go out to fight for a couple of days, a long weekend, versus one group, maybe another weekend versus another group, and return back to farming. So why does that matter? Well, the Phalanx allows for the first time untrained footmen to stand, fight, and survive in a battle. This is very different from Middle Eastern armies, who use the chariot and cavalry, men who ride horses. Either men who are on a platform behind horses, chariots, or men who ride horses, cavalry. If you are a farmer with a stick on a battlefield, facing chariots or cavalry in 1000 BC, you're in a lot of trouble. If Ramses is riding at you, you are in a lot of trouble. You have about a 20-minute life expectancy before somebody rolls through and shoots you in the face. You don't know how to fight. You're a little old farmer. You can't defend yourself. You're on this open field that there is nothing protecting you on any side. And horses and chariots can ride at 20 miles an hour wherever they want, unencumbered. Well, for the first time in the mountains of Greece, footmen can survive a battle, can win a battle on their own. This makes them important to society. You don't have cavalry. You don't have chariots in the Greek mountains. So we can't pay these people, these men. We don't have the money to pay them to be in the army. So what do they get? We invent citizenship. We say, you are Athenian, you are Spartan, you are Theban, you are special. And being a Theban citizen, an Athenian citizen, a Spartan citizen gives you special rights. It is an admission of connection, a mutual connection between the city and the people. I am X. And that X says, you're one of us, and you're special to us. Now, this is seen in three different ways, three different parts: rights, responsibilities, and freedoms. The biggest right I get is the right to decide my government. If I am going to be sent to war, I want to have a say in what war I'm going to fight in. So when a bunch of rich dudes get up and go, hey, let's go fight the Spartans, I go, well, hey, whoa, ho, 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 maybe we should negotiate a little bit before we go fight the Spartans. So I get a right. And my right, I get several rights, but my most important right is the right to vote, to have a say. Now remember, I am poor, insignificant farmer dude. I am a nobody. But I get to have a say. And everybody with me who stands in the Phalanx gets to have a say. In fact, anybody who ever stood in a Phalanx gets to have a say. You don't lose your citizenship once you get it. 2, you have responsibilities. What responsibility do you have? You got to serve in the army. You don't get the right to vote till you serve in the army. You have to serve in the army. It's the deal. You serve in the army, you get out, you fight in a battle, a couple battles, you get out, boom. You get citizenship. Now, next year, you're probably going to fight again. And next year, remember we talked about how you start in the middle, you go to the front, you go to the back of the Phalanx. So you're going to fight many times in your lifetime. So the first time you do it, boom, you get citizenship. You're a man. Remember when I talked about how you get armor and you're a man? Well, this is part of that. This is why you would spend so much money on the armor. Because now you're going to be a citizen, not some poor schlep. And I get freedoms, especially of my body and of speech, to say what I want and to go where I want. Compare this to slaves. Slaves can't say what they want. Slaves can't go where they want. Slaves are told where to go. They don't have control of their body. I am no man's slave. I am my own person. I am independent. And so this is going to mess people up all over the place. And the freer they get, the more democratic they get, the more in charge of their bodies they get. So that even other Greeks look at Athenians, who are the most democratic, and are like, they're so annoying. They just go where they want to go, do what they want to do. But Greeks, compared to like Egyptians, like had no manners. The Egyptians were like, this is a proper way to do things. You have to stand in the line like the king said so. And these people just come in and they're like, I'm Greek. I'm going to do what I want. My dog's going to poop here in the park and I'm just going to walk away. Why? Because I'm Greek and I can do what I want. I'm free. And you get freedoms over your body. You can go where you want to go and do what you want to do. You also get freedom of speech to say what you want. Why? Because you have to have the freedom to say what you want in the assembly. It's not enough just to vote against going to war with the Spartans. You have to be able to get up and say, this is why we shouldn't go to war against the Spartans. I have to have the right to convince other people. And likewise, they have the right to say I'm wrong and say we totally have to go to war against the Spartans. It's the only way we can do it. And they have the freedom to convince other people that they're right. But I have to be able to say, I support this or I'm against this. Otherwise, that right to vote doesn't matter. Freedoms are not a thing. See, in America, we consider freedoms to be a thing that you can hold. They're not. They're a space. They're a space the government says we won't go into. You have that. See, if I have the right to vote, great, I can vote. But if I don't have the right to say who I'm voting for, or the government says you can only vote for one of two people, like under communism, I have the right to vote, but does it matter? If my only choice is a dictator or a dictator's homeboy, does it matter that I have the right to vote? No, I have to have the freedom of conscience. The freedom to vote for who I want to vote for. And so what happens is, to accommodate these new changes, they invent the assembly, something that doesn't exist in Egypt, in Persia, in Babylon. The citizens have to have a place they can get together and argue stuff. And Athenians love to argue. They will spend the day arguing over what to have for breakfast and then vote on it and then be like, okay, what are we supposed to do here? Oh, we're voting for a war or something? Let's come back tomorrow and do that. So the assembly gets together. Now, that's not a democracy. An assembly is not a democracy. It's more like the Roman Republic, because there's also an oligarchy. Most committees work this way. Like, I'm a member of a union, so we have officers. All right, those officers will run the meeting. We're going to get together, and there's an assembly of professors. There'll be 50 professors sitting there, right? And they'll have all their ideas, and they'll have the right to say what they want and vote on what they want. But what's going to happen? The president is going to get up and say, okay, I'm calling the meeting to order, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this, and then this person's going to speak, and then this person's going to speak, and then this person's going to speak. And that president and those officers are in charge of the meeting. And this is how it usually goes. We'll have a discussion, and it'll be like, should we have more faculty parking spaces? And the president and or one of the officers gets up and says, this is why I think we should have more parking spaces. And they will give an argument. And they'll then say, I think you guys should vote we're going to have a vote. More parking spaces or less parking spaces. I think you should vote for more parking spaces. And then people will vote. Now, usually what the assembly does is vote what the oligarchs, what the leaders want. They go, okay, you're our leaders. We voted for you to be the leader. We're cool with that. You do your thing. Every once in a while, the assembly could object to that. But for the most part, they follow along. But if you have a navy, things get interesting. So like the Spartan assembly, even though Sparta is like this weird military dictatorship with kings, it still has an assembly where young men get together. Now, the men in charge, the kings, the generals, get up and they say, this is what I think. But you still have the right to vote. But if you have a navy, things change. First of all, navies are rare. Only a few people have it. Athens will have one. Corinth will have one. Only a few will have navies. And the navy, the ship is called a trireme. 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 Why does this matter? Well, the trireme means 3 rows of oars. That means it's not sail power that powers it in battle, because the Mediterranean is too choppy. You can't rely on the winds. You need people to row. And a trireme took 200 men to row. And navies fought the same way the Phalanx fought. They put a ram, a 500-pound ram at the front of the boat, and you charged in, punched a hole, you rammed another ship, you punched a hole in its side, and you backed up, and you rammed it again. They fought like a phalanx at sea. But it took 200 men per boat. Now, Athens will have 300 boats. For 100 years, Athens will have 300 boats. 300 boats times 200 men equals 60,000 rowers. And here's the kicker. Anybody can be a rower. Anybody. You don't need armor. You don't need to pay. They'll pay you because you now can't work. And so the government says, we'll pay you to be a rower because you're important. We'll pay you. You're going to be away for 4 months. You can't work. And we need as many rowers as possible. We need 60,000. We have to find 60,000 rowers. Now, these guys are going to go out in mid-May. They're going to come home in September. They're going to row for 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're going to eat a low bad fat, high fish, high protein, low carb diet. So what do you think they look like when they get back in Athens in September? After rowing 7 days a week for 8 hours a day. They're ripped. They're jacked. They are ripped young men between the ages of 25 and 40 for the most part. And now they have money because they couldn't spend any money. So when they get off the boat, they get the check. They get their money. They get their pay. So they now have money. They're ripped. They have confidence because they are members of the Navy and the Army. They're members of the military. And then you get a democracy. Why? Because there are 60,000 young, jacked dudes, and they're going to want to have a say. And there's too many of them to not. There's too many of them to say, shut up and sit down. There's too many. They're too strong. They're too important. And so what happens in a democracy is the assembly becomes sovereign. Not the people at the front, the assembly. So we may elect, the group may elect leaders to kind of keep us on topic, but the guys on top, we'll elect a president of the assembly, and he'll get up and says, let's talk about, today we're scheduled to talk about parking spaces. And somebody gets up and goes, I don't want to talk about parking spaces. I want to talk about healthcare. And somebody else gets up and says, yeah, let's talk about healthcare. And what happens? If enough people want it, suddenly the assembly's talking about healthcare. And the guy who was elected to lead the meeting sits down. Because the assembly can make its own decisions. It makes its own rules. It decides on its own what it's going to do as a group. And that's a democracy. Remember, America is not a democracy. We are a republic. We vote for the men or women, but we vote for the people who will make the laws. In a democracy, an Athenian democracy, the assembly made its own rules itself. You didn't vote for representatives. You did it yourself. When you voted to go to war, you voted for yourself to go to war. So the idea that anybody can row, all poor people can be in the Navy, and that they come out and they're fit and they got money in their pockets that they can spend, they're too important, and they're going to want to have a say. And what they do is, because there's just sheer numbers, they take over the assembly and they run it. And that's how you get a democracy. So what are our effects? Our effects are the Phalanx allows young men, footmen, poor men, farmers to survive a battle. We can't pay them money, so what they want is citizenship. And that gives them rights and responsibilities and freedoms. And they use that to create an assembly, to create a new government where they will have a say. If you have a navy, this goes the next step where that assembly becomes sovereign and makes its own rules. And that's a democracy. And that's what we're going to pick up with culture in our next episode. We're going to talk about Homer. We're going to talk about drama. In our next couple of episodes, we're talking about Greek culture. Thank you.